It was a warm summer evening in Grand Junction, Colorado, when Paige Birgfeld's white Ford Focus pulled out of the driveway for what seemed like a regular trip. The sun had dipped low behind the red cliffs, painting the sky in soft gold. Paige smiled as she waved goodbye to her 3 kids. They didn't know it would be the last time they saw their mother. To them, she was just going out for some errands, like always. Paige was the kind of woman everyone admired. A 34-year-old single mother, she worked multiple jobs, managed her household, and still found time to take her kids to dance classes and soccer games. Her friends called her a supermom. Behind her warm smile, though, Paige was carrying the weight of hidden struggles, unpaid bills, a failed marriage, and a desperate attempt to keep everything from falling apart. That night, her phone buzzed more than usual. Some calls came from her clients, others from friends. But one number, a private one, stood out. She answered briefly, her voice calm but cautious. Nobody knew what was said in that conversation, but hours later, everything changed. At 9 p.m., Paige's 8-year-old son, Jess, tried calling her. She always picked up, no matter what. But this time, it went to voicemail. He waited, called again, and again, still no answer. Then he left a message. His voice was small and trembling. "Mom, where are you? It's dark outside. Please come home." That voicemail would later become one of the most chilling parts of the entire investigation, a child's last message to his missing mother. By the next morning, Paige's car still hadn't returned home. Her kids had slept restlessly, and when their father came by to check, he immediately knew something was wrong. Paige was responsible, organized, and never disappeared without telling someone. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her friends hadn't heard from her either. By noon, a missing person report was filed. Police started their search that same afternoon. At first, they suspected maybe she had gone on a short trip, maybe to clear her mind. But as hours turned into days, things started to look darker. Detectives looked into her background. Paige had been living a double life, not out of choice, but out of survival. By day, she sold beauty products and taught dance classes. By night, she ran a secret escort business under another name, something she kept hidden even from her closest friends. Her family didn't know. Her clients didn't know her real story. She had done everything to protect her kids and give them a normal life. But that secret world, the one she thought she controlled, was about to destroy everything. Investigators began tracing her last phone calls. They discovered that the final number she contacted before disappearing belonged to one of her regular clients, a man named Lester Ralph Jones. He was older, married, and had a history of violent temper. When detectives interviewed him, he claimed he hadn't seen Paige in months. But something about his tone didn't sit right. A few days later, police found Paige's car abandoned near a dirt road, 20 miles away from her home. Inside were her purse, phone charger, and a few scattered papers. There was no sign of struggle, but something about the placement felt deliberate, like someone had staged the scene. Forensic experts searched the area but found no footprints, no blood, no broken glass. It was as if Paige had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, her family and friends flooded the town with missing posters. They organized search parties, walking through fields and riverbanks, calling her name, hoping she would just walk out from the trees. The voicemail from her son started playing in the news, breaking hearts across the country. People couldn't imagine what kind of person would hurt a mother of 3. Detectives turned back to Lester Jones. He worked at a local RV dealership, not far from where Paige's car was found. He had a criminal history, kidnapping, assault, and even arson. When police checked his phone records, they found multiple calls to Paige on the night she vanished. When questioned again, he changed his story. He said they had met that night for business reasons, but he left her alive and well. The investigators didn't believe him. Still, there was no physical evidence. No body. No witness. No confession. Weeks passed. Paige's friends kept calling her phone, hoping she'd answer. Her voicemail filled up with messages, voices trembling, begging her to come home. The police brought in cadaver dogs, drones, and volunteers, but the trail grew cold. Then, almost 3 months later, a hiker in Delta County stumbled upon something horrifying, a few burnt pieces of clothing near a ravine. When detectives arrived, they found charred remains that would later be identified as belonging to Paige Birgfeld. It wasn't just a murder anymore. It was a message, someone wanted to erase her completely. The news shattered the community. People who had once judged Paige for her secret life now only saw a mother who worked herself to death trying to survive. The story made national headlines. And behind the cameras, detectives were more determined than ever to catch the man responsible. They believed they already knew who he was. But proving it would take years. The discovery of Paige's burnt remains shattered the small Colorado town. Grand Junction had always been the kind of place where everyone knew each other, safe, peaceful, and quiet. But after the news broke, people started locking their doors early, whispering rumors at grocery stores and gas stations. For Paige's family, time had stopped. Her 3 children were too young to understand what really happened. They kept asking when their mom would come home, their innocent voices breaking the hearts of everyone who heard them. For investigators, the discovery of her body was a turning point. They finally knew she was gone, but now the question was why and who did this. Detectives had already built a list of possible suspects. Paige's ex-husbands, former clients, even some co-workers, but one name kept returning to the top: Lester Ralph Jones. He had been one of the last people to call her. He had a violent history. And the burned remains were found just 15 miles from the RV shop where he worked. Detective Young led the case, a man known for his quiet persistence. He believed Jones had carefully planned Paige's murder. The problem was, there was no DNA, no fingerprints, no witnesses. It was like Jones had erased every trace of her existence. Police began digging into his past. Jones had spent time in prison before, for kidnapping and assaulting a woman. The story was disturbingly similar. He had lured her into his car, tied her up, and attacked her. Somehow, he was released after serving only a few years. To detectives, this wasn't a coincidence, it was a pattern. They got a search warrant for Jones's home and workplace. Inside his locker at the RV shop, they found maps, rope, and duct tape, ordinary things on their own. But when investigators noticed burn marks on some of the materials, their suspicions deepened. Still, Jones denied everything. "I didn't hurt her," he said. "I liked her. I thought she was a good woman." He claimed he had called her for massage services, but never met up that night. His wife supported his alibi, but quietly, investigators began to notice cracks in her story too. Meanwhile, Paige's friends were determined to clear her name. They were tired of seeing the media focus on her secret escort life instead of who she truly was, a loving mother. She wasn't some criminal, one friend said during a news interview. She was trying to take care of her kids. That's all. The media attention became overwhelming. TV vans parked outside her neighborhood, asking questions, filming every corner. For her family, every headline felt like reopening a wound. Months turned into years, and still, there was no arrest. The case went cold. But Detective Young refused to let it die. He kept revisiting the evidence, rewatching interview tapes, and retracing Paige's last steps. Then, something caught his eye: the phone records. Jones's phone had been turned off for a few hours on the exact night Paige disappeared. When it was turned back on, cell tower data showed it had pinged near the same rural area where her burned body was eventually found. It wasn't hard proof, but it was a breadcrumb. In 2011, nearly 4 years after Paige's disappearance, detectives brought Jones in for another round of questioning. This time, they pressed harder. "Why did your phone go off that night?" "I was home. My phone battery died." "You sure? Because cell data shows otherwise." Jones's face tightened. He avoided eye contact, his jaw clenching. The room went silent. Then, he leaned forward and said, "You can't prove anything. You got no body." He didn't know they already did. The detectives exchanged glances, realizing he might have just slipped. When they told him her remains had been found, Jones froze. "That's impossible," he said. From that moment, they knew he was lying. But the road to justice was long. Forensics worked on identifying DNA from the burned remains, but heat had destroyed most of the samples. It wasn't until a small piece of jewelry, a silver bracelet engraved with the name Paige, was confirmed to be hers that they officially declared her death a homicide. Years went by. Paige's children grew older, now living with their father. But the pain stayed. Every birthday, every holiday, there was an empty seat at the table. In 2014, the case took a dramatic turn. A cold case investigator reopened the file and began using newer technology to analyze the old evidence. One key discovery changed everything. Traces of cell tower data placed Jones's phone in the exact same rural area where Paige's car had been abandoned and later where her remains were found. It was finally enough to bring charges. In November 2014, 7 long years after Paige's murder, Lester Ralph Jones was arrested for kidnapping and killing Paige Birgfeld. The community that had waited years for justice finally exhaled. But the trial would reveal details even darker than anyone expected. During the court hearings, prosecutors painted a haunting picture. They described how Jones, obsessed with Paige, had called her repeatedly under fake names. They claimed he arranged to meet her under the guise of a new client, then abducted her, killed her, and tried to burn the evidence. The defense argued there was no direct proof, no DNA, no eyewitness, no confession. But the circumstantial evidence, they said, told a complete story. In the courtroom, Paige's family sat silently, holding hands. The prosecutor played her son's voicemail, the one he left the night she went missing. The room fell silent except for the faint, trembling voice of an 8-year-old saying, "Mom, please come home." Even the judge had tears in his eyes. For the jury, that voicemail was more than just evidence, it was the emotional core of the case. It reminded everyone that this wasn't just about a secret life or a headline, it was about 3 children who lost their mother forever. Jones sat motionless during the entire playback. No emotion, no tears, just silence. After 2 long weeks of testimony, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. As the verdict was read, Paige's family broke down in tears. The courtroom filled with emotion, relief, sorrow, and a quiet sense of justice. Jones was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was 63 years old. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Paige's family. Her father simply said, "We waited a long time for this day. Paige can finally rest." But even with the conviction, the story didn't end. Behind the cameras, her children were still growing up without their mom. The oldest, Jess, now a teenager, said in one interview years later, "People talk about what my mom did for work. But to me, she was just my mom. The person who tucked me in every night. That's who I remember." And that voicemail, the one he left the night she vanished, remains frozen in time, a haunting reminder of the night innocence was lost forever. The clock struck midnight in Grand Junction, and the silence of the small town felt heavy, the kind that only comes when people are afraid to talk about what they know. The disappearance of Paige Birgfeld had started to shake the entire community. Everyone had heard of her, the devoted mother, the kind neighbor, the woman who somehow managed to juggle 3 jobs and still smile for her kids. But now, people were whispering about the other side of Paige's life, the side no one wanted to believe was true. Detective Linda Jefferson sat at her desk, her tired eyes glued to the audio recording, the same one they'd been analyzing for days. It was the voicemail from Paige's 8-year-old son. His trembling voice echoed in the empty room. "Mom, are you okay? You said you'd be home for dinner. I made the macaroni. Please come back." Every time Linda replayed it, it felt like a knife twisting deeper. There were faint sounds in the background, something mechanical, maybe an engine. And then, a man's voice, barely audible, saying, "Get rid of it." That was the part that haunted her. Across town, Paige's red Ford Focus had been found abandoned in a quiet parking lot. The car looked ordinary at first glance, but investigators quickly realized something was off. Inside, Paige's purse was there, her wallet, credit cards, and phone all neatly placed in the passenger seat. But the driver's seat had been pushed all the way back, far too much for someone of her height. And there were ashes on the floor mat, cigarette burns on the console. Paige didn't smoke. Detectives began to dig into Paige's private life. It turned out she wasn't just a single mom and dance instructor, she also had a secret business under another name, Carrie. Through this alias, Paige offered companionship services to clients. It wasn't illegal by itself, but it meant she met people behind closed doors, and one of them might have wanted her dead. Her phone records revealed a string of calls made the night she vanished. One number stood out, it belonged to Lester Ralph Jones, a former client. He was an auto mechanic who had once worked at a local repair shop. When police questioned him, he appeared calm but nervous. He claimed he hadn't seen Paige in months. Yet, the evidence told another story. Security footage showed his truck driving toward the area where Paige's car was found, just hours after she disappeared. Still, there wasn't enough to arrest him. The detectives needed more. Meanwhile, Paige's family was breaking apart. Her daughter Brooke cried herself to sleep every night, clutching her mother's old scarf. Her son, the same one who had left the voicemail, had stopped talking altogether. Friends tried to stay hopeful, but everyone felt it, the dreadful sense that Paige wasn't coming home. Weeks passed. Then came the anonymous tip. A man reported seeing a fire in a remote area near Wells Gulch. When police arrived, they found ashes, charred debris, and what appeared to be fragments of human bone. DNA testing confirmed it, it was Paige Birgfeld. The entire town went silent. What had started as a missing persons case had become a murder investigation. The once bright image of Paige, the smiling mother, the friendly neighbor, was now surrounded by secrets, betrayal, and tragedy. Detective Linda stood at the site of the discovery, looking at the blackened earth. She clenched her jaw, whispering to herself, "We'll find who did this, Paige. I promise." The case was now personal. And somewhere, in a dimly lit garage, Lester Jones sat alone, watching the news about Paige's death, his hands trembling, the flicker of guilt flashing across his face before he turned off the TV and sat in silence. But what he didn't know was that the evidence trail was closing in. The voicemail, the phone records, the security footage, everything was starting to connect. And soon, there would be nowhere left to hide. The morning sun rose over Grand Junction, but it brought no warmth, only a chilling sense of finality. The news of Paige Birgfeld's death had spread everywhere. Reporters gathered outside the police station, their microphones raised, waiting for answers. Inside, Detective Linda Jefferson wasn't celebrating an arrest or closure. She was angry. Angry that Paige had been betrayed, silenced, and discarded like she didn't matter. The final piece of the puzzle came from the forensic lab. Investigators had combed through Paige's burned remains and found traces of a specific type of plastic, the kind used in auto repair supplies. It was rare, and there was only one local shop that sold it, the one where Lester Ralph Jones worked. Armed with a search warrant, the detectives descended on his garage. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. Lester stood by his workbench, pretending to be calm, but his eyes flickered with panic. Linda's voice was firm but steady. "Lester Jones, we have reason to believe you were the last person to see Paige Birgfeld alive." They began searching. In a corner of the garage, beneath a tarp, they found something that made the entire room go silent, a small piece of charred fabric. Later testing would prove it was from the towel that had been used to partially cover Paige's body. When confronted with the evidence, Lester's mask began to crack. He leaned back against the wall, sweat forming on his forehead. "It was an accident," he mumbled. She was going to tell my wife. I just wanted to scare her." Linda's jaw tightened. "You burned her body, Lester. You took away a mother from her children." He didn't respond. His eyes were blank, not with regret, but with the realization that he was caught. The trial that followed captivated the entire nation. Every day, the courtroom filled with reporters, townspeople, and Paige's devastated family. Prosecutors revealed the shocking double life Paige had led, the secret clients, the hidden alias, the financial struggles. But they also painted her as what she truly was, a mother who worked herself to exhaustion just to give her kids a better life. Lester Jones's defense tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial. But the jury didn't buy it. Between the phone records, his vehicle seen near the crime scene, and the forensic link to his workshop, the verdict was inevitable. After weeks of testimony and emotional breakdowns, the judge finally read the words everyone had been waiting for. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Lester Ralph Jones, guilty of first-degree murder." A ripple of relief swept through the courtroom. Paige's family held each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. Linda stood in the back, her eyes glassy. Justice had been served, but the victory felt hollow. There was no bringing Paige back. Later that evening, Linda drove to Wells Gulch, the site where Paige's remains had been found. She placed a single white rose on the blackened soil. The wind whispered through the trees, and for a moment, she could almost hear Paige's laughter, soft, fleeting, like a ghost of what once was. Back home, Paige's children sat by a framed photo of their mother. Her son, the same boy who had left that haunting voicemail, played it one last time before deleting it forever. "Mom, are you okay? You said you'd be home for dinner." He whispered into the silence, "She's home now." The camera of the mind pans out, from the grieving children to the quiet town below, to the flashing red and blue lights fading in the distance. The story of Paige Birgfeld was over, but her voice, her fight, her love, would echo forever in the hearts of those who refused to forget.